young mothers facing cancer only receive about 5% of cancer support services in the United States. I was diagnosed when I was pregnant with my second son, and I had metastatic melanoma. It
Yeah.
is possible to have grief and gratitude at the same time. It sounds weird, but it's totally, they can live together and they can coexist.
Hey, Aloha Love Tribe. Guess what? This is somebody who has been on, the tilt-a-whirl roller coaster, in and out, upside down world of courage, world of art, world of family, world of healing, world of recovery. I'm so excited to have Nerissa Balland, the author of Canvas of Courage, on the show. We're going to talk about your journey. And Nerissa was named one of the top 10 inspirational artists by MSN, among a million other things that we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Nerissa. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So let's talk about who you are, how you got to where you are, and then we'll talk about Canvas of Courage. And I want to, let the audience know what they're going to get out of listening to this podcast. What will they understand about you and your journey by the end?
Wow, that's a lot to sum
What's
up
a
in
lot?
all about me and what will you get today?
What's in it for you?
For sure. Well, I think depending on the audience, you'll receive different types of tidbits of information and hopefully some gems that can help you wherever you are and whatever you're navigating at this time. Specifically, I would say people undergoing adversity of any type can benefit from what we're going to talk about today. Anyone that's creative doesn't have to be health adversity either, even though that's more a part of my story. I think that as human beings, we're connected in a number of ways. And one of that is, how do we show up to adversity, whatever that type of challenge could be for someone? So I think while my story tends to revolve around creativity and cancer, you don't have to have cancer in order to listen to this podcast and get something out of it. So, how do we heal through that? We using creativity and gratitude and hope. Um, let's say creativity is medicine in my case, but not to replace modern day medicine if you do have health issues in that way. But yeah, if facing adversity, what are some tools and what are some things that could help us? And know that you're not alone.
Amazing. I'm so excited. And so let's hear a little bit of your backstory and how you got here. And, just I want to hear the journey so the audience can get an idea of who you are.
Sure. So, I am a mother. I'm an artist. I am now an author uh,
Yay.
and a therapeutic arts practitioner, which we'll get into later. And my story is maybe not different from someone who's listening in some cases, and maybe quite different, but we definitely have commonalities as human beings. Um, and my story is this. So I am an artist today, but maybe perhaps wouldn't have called myself, even though I've studied art for a long time and I've been in the art world in different roles, corporate, more on that side of art direction and creative direction for 20 years in marketing, and then moved over to visual artist and really just pursuing my dreams and passion and purpose in the visual arts professional world of being an artist. But it took me some time to get there. And I'm also a cancer survivor, two-time cancer survivor. I was diagnosed when I was pregnant with my second son, and I had metastatic melanoma. I am currently no evidence detective, 8 years. I love to say that right away because usually when you tell people you've been diagnosed with cancer, it's like, wah, wah, wah. And then they're like, "But where are you at? What are we looking at here?" In that case, I ended up writing a book, and since we've last talked, I know we have an interview several years ago talking
Mhm.
with our discomfort. And at that time, I was um, not in remission, but I was going through treatments, and then I had no cancer and then I came back and so forth. So definitely at a different point in my life right now. And my kids are a little bit older. Um, I wrote a book, and I wanted to write a book not just about my story, but about other women's stories too. And part of that was a healing process in itself, very eye opening, and allowed me to feel like I wasn't alone and in the journey. And the reason I say that is, typically speaking, um, young mothers facing cancer only receive about 5% of cancer support services in the United States. And so we roughly have uh, over 200,000 women a year that are considered young. When I use that term, I'm defining that as someone under 40.
Mhm.
Meaning, and there are women out there that have cancer and who are mothers. They could be 65, 70, 85, whatever. And they still are mothers and they still have children, maybe grandchildren, but they're at different phases of their life. And I specifically really wanted to focus in on um, women that were raising young children, and they tended to be young. And they weren't the picture of what you would expect when you walk into an oncology office and you're looking for someone that looks like you, because there aren't many of us in there constantly. But it is unfortunately a growing trend that we're seeing among younger women being diagnosed with cancer today.
And what prompted you to say, it's time for me to write this, put all this in a book and get other people's stories? Because it's one thing, obviously from a healing perspective to write, to create art, to do a song, to do something to get it out and share this message, which is, I think, cathartic in and of itself. But then to also allow the journey and the expression of all of these other women, like what, because I think of chicken soup for the soul, kind of like this is like which is beautiful. And I'm always interested because I love stories. I don't know if you remember this, Nerissa, but this was like, oh my gosh, uh I mean, it was a long time ago when Steve and I were first together, but I was working on this Every Woman's Wisdom project. And I think, and
Something about that I do remember, because I
yeah,
remember I remember the Every Woman's Wisdom. Yeah.
EW, and I was just, it was first, I'm like, what's a website? I didn't even know like the whole internet stuff, and you were helping me, and I was just so, and then I ended up getting pregnant and just forgetting that whole project. But I was always interested in storytelling because it's so fascinating, because you do get this like kaleidoscope of perspectives, right? Because it's not just yours, and it helps you not feel alone, obviously, and it's like nice to share and celebrate other people too on their journey of, being a human. Whether it's, through these difficult times or the celebrations or both, or I feel like it gives us a lot more compassion and empathy for the human experience for all of us, as people. So how did it all of a sudden get the light bulb, like, I'm doing this? Like, where were you when you finally were just like, it's happening, I'm doing this?
So it was 2020. We were just coming into the pandemic, so about March of 2020. Um, and unknowingly how long that pandemic would last, or what that really meant or looked like, or even the severity of it. I didn't have any of those answers or questions even. I kind of thought that it was something that would dissipate. However, um, I was also in during a time when I was trying to find some support for myself, which I failed quite a lot on trying to find groups or something. And when I say that is, I was really just looking locally at first, nothing with the internet or going that way, but hey, what could be at my oncology hospital or center or doctor's office, so forth. I had looked at cancer support services, and at the time, then really nothing for me at all. Even support groups tended to be people who were considerably older. When I was first diagnosed, I was 38. So by the time I'm now looking for resources, now I'm 40. a little bit older, but still not as old as the groups that I would see attendees for this. So I started to look online a little bit on Facebook, and I started to find a couple groups there that were great that I loved. And I went on there and I would read about other people's stories. I would look, sometimes I'd comment, sometimes I'd just be an observer at first to see like what's going on, what's being said. And it was very fascinating because I'd find all different types of people on the internet, right? Ones suffering greatly, ones that were thriving, everything in between. What I started to realize as I was observing stories online, and I'll backtrack just one second because I think you said something important earlier about storytelling and that you love stories and that there's something, a connection for you that draws you into wanting to know about the different stories. I really feel, and as having been in marketing for 20 years, it's about storytelling, whether it's a brand or so, whatever product you're bringing forward, there's a story that resonates with a target audience. But stories as a whole, aside from marketing, are since the beginning of time. I mean,
Mhm.
spiritually, you can go back. What's the number one most sold book in the world? It's the Bible. And those are stories, right? And no one's alive to verify any of those at the moment, but we scholarly can go through them, pick them apart, share them, talk about them, believe or disbelieve wherever we fall with that. Storytelling is natural, it's innate. I think it's part of our DNA as human beings in terms of connecting. And today, unlike thousands and years ago, we have the ability to get stories and information all the time, very quickly, on the
Yeah.
go. Um, However, we also have stories that go on in our minds, right?
Yup. The jukebox, the
And
perpetual
we can
jukebox.
spend a lot of time on that topic and how we rewire that and
Yeah.
how we're fixing it and improving ourselves or not. We're getting into more trouble and making poor choices. But there's a story, there's a script in our brain. And we're what we share with that is only what someone outside of us would know that we want to share. However, we want to curate that. But we do have them internally. So I think like there's this interesting thing about storytelling. It exists everywhere, all day long, 24/7. Even when you seem like you're silent, your mind is running with something.
Yup.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I felt like I had a story. I wanted to tell it. And to be honest, at first I thought, who cares? Like I'm not anybody that anybody really knows outside of my own network. And it's just one story. And while it's one story and maybe it's powerful to me or the people that know me, people that don't know me, I felt it's missing something. If I were to move forward with writing, this is a bigger thing than just me. But my story is important to share, but I think it does better in community because my whole point was I'm looking for people that look like me, right? That are in the same band camp as me, that are young with cancer, pregnant with cancer, babies with cancer, maybe want to have a family, but they're not starting yet because they have cancer. And before they do any treatment, they have to begin to freeze their eggs or do something that will plan for perhaps if they get through it, that they could have a family later.
Yeah.
Um, those are not the common categories in the oncology world that people go through or that we're seeing, but it is growing. So initially, when I started really paying attention, engaging online in some support groups that way, one thing I noticed about women is they really, that had cancer, really it didn't matter what type of cancer, they position themselves constantly as a number or a stage or a treatment. And I really felt like we were going away from the story.
Mhm.
And now we're a ticket, a number, a stage, a diagnosis, a treatment, a surgery. But I don't know your name. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know anything about you. And it bothered me because that's how people that's how people were introducing themselves
Mm.
initially, right? Always as a state, I'm stage 3B this, I'm stage 4, I'm 2A, I'm whatever that was. And I thought it's fascinating that like right after diagnosis, everybody seems very clinical in the way they were presenting themselves. So I really wanted to get to know these people as people and not their diagnosis. What happened? What's the story behind it?
Yeah.
So I started to put out on the Facebook groups like, "Hey, this is who I am. I'm interested in hearing your story. I'm interested in writing something eventually. If you're open to sharing your story, if you're open to being potentially published in a book about your story, I would love to hear from you. So let's set up a time." So I started setting up interviews with people via Zoom where I would record them and the audio and the video. And I had questions, and a lot of it was allowing them to talk and to share their stories. Um, and I think I've had a little over 100 interviews in that
Wow.
year.
Wow.
It was very emotionally draining. I don't think I realized what I was getting
You're like,
into. And
"Whoa."
yes, wow, it really opened my eyes to a lot of different scenarios, very different than mine. But I was looking for commonality in the end. So I spent a year with the interviews. I left it alone for a year because I was drained. Come 2021, it was like, I need to put this aside. This is a little too much for me. It's very overwhelming. And I had a hard time being able to separate myself from these people. I wanted to know more. I would worry depending on where they were at. Are they going to make it? Are they not? And it wasn't healthy. I was really embodying like everybody's story for myself. And I had a hard time separating that. So I stepped away from my passion project for a while, and then slowly I would return here and there and I would write some notes down, or I would run into somebody who was like, "You've got to talk to this person. This person would be great for you." And so I would occasionally have a one off or something after that. I wasn't soliciting to get more people at this point. I felt like I had a lot of content. Um, and I didn't think I could take any more emotionally listening to more stories.
Yeah.
So I again had a few breaks, come back, write a few things, and then I would go in and out of these ups and downs of how do I start this? What is this process? I mean, I'm a visual artist. I'm not a writer or an author in that way. I mean, I love to creatively write, but I wouldn't in any sense or form have called myself a writer before or an author in any way. So it was a lot of like, how do you do this? How do you make this happen? How does it turn from a bunch of stories? And slowly what I started to do is go back to those stories when I felt emotionally healthy enough and that I could listen and listen again and again to stories, because I had to take them from the transcripts that were audio into a written format and then break them apart a lot. It was a lot of going back and in reviewing and reviewing. Um, that would take another break from that process,
Can I
and
ask
then
you,
slowly.
because I so relate to this, just you're obviously an empath and you absorb things. I do too, hardcore, and I'm really learning, like, you know, energy hygiene to really honor, like, my boundaries with people and things and getting too overstimulated by the trauma in the world and other people. So I hibernate quite a bit just because it keeps me more grounded and sane. Like, what are some practices, and I know it sounds like you had enough awareness to, like, okay, this is too much. I need to step back, And so for anybody who's listening who might be an empath and a creative, like, you know, it sounds like you had like a good, like I said, that awareness. Did you have any other tools or things that you were doing to sort of just like okay, you need to sit here for a little while project, and I'll come back to you when I feel like healthy and my cup is full and I'm not like feeling too depleted. Did you do any like practices?
Yeah, so I do a lot of practices already because you're spot on. I am an empath in that way, and and there's a lot of layers and different types of empaths out there.
Yeah.
And during this process, actually, in our last interview several years ago, I was going through reading the survival guide for an empath,
Mhm.
learning, hadn't learned anything. I didn't even know what that was until I was 40.
Yeah.
Um, he was actually my cancer coach, Leslie Kelly. He was amazing. He was also dedicated in my book. She's the one that was like, you should check out this book. And I was like, okay. So I checked it out and I was like, "This is me." All of a sudden, I was like, "This answers so many of the questions." I feel like my whole life I've been crazy. And I was like, "Yes,
You're not
yes,
crazy, you're just an empath.
just okay." So once I was like, all right, now I understand what this is. Now I need the tools to be able to control it and recognize when it comes on. So I did to answer your question. There are a lot of different things I tried out, and that this is also the same thing that I practice what I preach. So
Mhm.
sound healing was great. I'm a big person that likes to take classes for things when I do that. When I learn, I like to be hands on, and I like somebody to instruct or show and be there. So I had started a master sound healing class and um, loved it. I really loved it. I had a great time with it. I sound healing for me is very helpful and therapeutic. Um, so I started doing that. Obviously, might have my own art, and depending on what I'm making, also goes into that. Um, and then just also practicing a little more silence in my life. So I've always loved music. I've always liked distractions. A lot of noise and things around me, and I think that that's was a little bit of a misconception, but for me, for a long time, I felt having that, meant I wasn't alone, and when I have the music or I have things, I love that it would invoke a feeling or it would bring something out that maybe I needed it to bring out for me that I wasn't able to bring out for myself. And so I practiced a lot of different things in terms of from sound healing to practicing more like being in silence and what does that look like or what's coming up. I also practiced a lot. I was really got into therapeutic arts, which at the time I hadn't. I knew a lot about art therapy, but not therapeutic arts, and they're very different.
Can you
Uh,
explain?
yeah. So art therapy tends to be a board certified a licensed therapist, and art therapy works on mental health. It's not it's not about the process of something with art therapy that you're working through to reduce stress or anxiety. It is to get to an end result to understand a diagnosis in mental health. Or if you know and it, or if sometimes if you want to go in these cases, children that are abused, you can use art therapy as a way when you don't have words to explain things to get to an understanding of what's going on, a situation. So it's very clinical in that way. Therapeutic arts, and it's semantics, but one thing you do learn a lot is being able to use the correct semantics so that you're not misleading somebody in something you do. So, therapeutic arts or therapeutic art practitioner is someone that focuses on the journey, not the end product, and uses creativity in that process to reduce uh, stress, reduce anxiety in the somatic nervous system specifically. Um, so it is not totally about dissociating from something. It is about being in whatever you're in, but guiding that through um, artistic ways or tools that you're using to get there.
Cool.
Um,
That makes sense. And you're working with people now doing this? And like, are you working with clients? I know you teach it, you've been teaching, you've done a whole bunch of different things with, your art and healing. And can you help us understand what that is?
sure. So currently with between the book and my art, I don't not doing private clients or working with anybody at the moment. I did for a while when I was working a lot with NLP, which is neuro linguistics programming, just a fancy term for brain language and how we process what we hear, we see, and we feeling kinesthetically, not emotionally, in the world. How do we show up to that? What's happening? Um, I'm really into cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP, and therapeutic arts as a little alphabet soup, so to speak, put together. And I did used to work more one-on-one with people. And over the years when I had started, I found that I am too much of an empath to really do that one-on-one work with someone. Again, it was how do I have that boundary?
Yeah,
And
that separation and not
yeah,
get Velcroed into their stuff.
yeah. And I realized pretty quickly within a year, like, that's not gonna work for me. So how can I still stay in this area, right, in this space and offer things that I know as a resource, but not necessarily be that one-on-one. So I started to do workshops and I got involved in arts and medicine or arts and health is also called. And that's that therapeutic art area where you could work with patients. I've worked and I've done some volunteer work with arts and medicine at Sylvester Cancer Comprehensive Center, which is the University of Miami Hospital.
Nice.
Um, and then doing my own workshops with different organizations and coming in and working with them, whether it was professional. I've done both the professional side and the personal side of it. So how do we bring that into the workspace? People burn out a lot and for different reasons. So in education, that's very common, and especially after around that pandemic period, people were
Yeah.
burning out. And I would bring that same type of resource and understanding to larger groups and do like a professional development series for schools with their administration or teachers. But what I would do that's a little different than when people think professional development was I would make them get in touch with their inner child.
Mm.
Why are you teaching? Right? What do you teach? You teach 7-year-olds? Okay. Let's take you back to when you were 7. So these would be very emotional. They turned out to be quite emotional journeys for some people in these types of workshops. But that's what I would do is more group oriented um, workshops in that area. As of right now, no, I'm like really working on the book, and then now I am working with cancer organizations on how to come forward. So it's not just the book is just a product, right, that you're giving out. It's the richness of the content that's inside of it. So I've been working with some breast cancer organizations right now in events that we want to put on and have something where it's not just about the book itself. It's really about what can we bring to a community aspect where we can serve the individuals that best need some support right now with creativity involved in the healing. So,
I love this. Well, I wanna a couple of things, like you were mentioning NLP and the subtitle is The Art of Healing, Hope, Gratitude for Young Mothers Facing Cancer. I love that you said facing cancer because it's not like with cancer, it's not battling cancer. It's like I'm facing this thing and this is what's up instead of this identity, like you said. And I think for me on my healing journey, with alcohol, like I started doing 12 steps, what was 8 years ago. And what was it 2016? What year are we? I don't even know what year, almost 10 years ago. Oh my God.
yeah, I
It's
was like,
like I'm
"What?"
so old. Yeah, almost 10 years ago. So I started doing that, and I found, like, okay, I'm kind of not really into this, but I was like, fine, I'll go to these support groups, I'll go to the women's groups, but I didn't like that I had to like raise my hand and identify as a thing. And because I'm like, how am I ever going to grow out of the thing, whatever the thing is? Like, oh, am I still a bulimic? Because I was when I was 16. And am I still this? Am I still that? I'm like, I want to program my mind to be the new version of me, which is like love and expansion and a child of God. I say God, spirit, universe, whatever, so I wanted to like not feel that I felt like I was in a cage if I was identifying a certain way. And I felt like I kept programming myself every time I would say that, and it was just, I'm like, well, okay, just go along with it and see what happens. And it just kept eating at me. And I remember going to a Tony Robbins thing, and he was talking about, um, the human need to be congruent with your identity, and if you identify as, oh, I'm a loser, I'm bad, I'm broken, and I saw really quickly like the broken crayons, clip that you had, which was beautiful because it's just like, you're still a crayon. It doesn't matter if it's just, you're going to be coloring from this end. So it started to really click for me about how important it is to self-identify as who I wish to be and how I want to show up in the world, instead of this old part of me, that had so much shame for me personally. It was like I had a giant king's cloak of shame around me all the time about how I self-medicated when I was in pain, and it turned into, obviously a whole bunch of nightmares with my alcohol. And so it's just like, finding a group of people who could listen to you from a lens that you feel seen and heard is what it sounds like you did when you found these women who are more like, because if you're talking to somebody who's, oh great, I got a grandchild, you're like, you don't remember what it's like to be going through what I'm going through right now and layering cancer on top of it. So to have that group of people that feel you and get you, and it's like, it is critical for all of us to seek those kinds of groups out, because like, I don't think a lot of people feel seen and heard in the world right now, and we're getting bombarded with all this negative information and us versus them and this and that, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And so I love that you're bringing people together to be heard and seen. Something I discovered recently was, it's called the Luckiest Club, and it's an online club that this woman Laura McCowan created for alcohol. And so it's on they use Mighty Networks as a back end, but it's got meetings all the time, and so it's super positive, and you don't have to like label yourself negatively. It's just like, we're all here because we want to have support and not drink. And I find the most comfort in the groups that are moms groups. And so I'm constantly like hanging out with the other moms and listening, and we're all on different, levels of where we are in our motherhood journey, but it's a whole different conversation than the other rooms that are mixed with a bunch of just, women, or mixed men and women, whatever. And so it's like niche down sometimes when we're healing, right? And so it's important to have that. So I just love that you're doing this, and it sounds like there's a huge need for moms to have a lot more support, in the younger moms category.
I also think what's interesting, well, thank you there for that, but I think what's interesting and something that you hit on too is that one, I was very much bothered by this concept of battling cancer.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It was very aggressive, and and it works for some people. So I'm not judging it, but for me it very much bothered me, and I felt pressure from this, and I felt like, well, we say fuck cancer and aggressive terms like that, we're going to stand up and we're going to do this. And yes, we are. And I do get the marketing kitschiness to all of that, and obviously it's true. It's like fuck cancer, but at the same time I felt like I don't feel aggressive towards it in that way. Yes, I'm angry that I have it. Yes, I'm going through lots of feelings and emotions, but I, between that and then trying to, what I say is like this toxic positivity, I didn't find it to be real, the positivity. And I was really looking for something authentic and genuine. And what I found in my place was, personally, just for me and with many other women too, it was when you stopped fighting yourself in this process, then you could find yourself. And when we turn to identity, which is one common theme that we have throughout the book, while no two journeys are the same in this book, there are commonalities. And the commonality one is identity and this sense of loss of oneself, which I'm here to say that's okay. to lose yourself after cancer or during cancer or when you're living with it. You will never be the same person you were before. It's impossible. Won't happen. And that's okay. And actually, it's not negative. So the way that we think of this loss, this grieving of something, you could take the time to grieve the old you if you liked the old you and found like, wow, well, how did I lose that life? Sure, there is a grieving process to that. But then there's also a process to embrace that look what you could have now, right? What can you be now? Who can you reinvent yourself as? What
Yeah.
more have you learned? And that doesn't always have to come with some terminal illness or health issue. Can happen with anything in
Yeah.
life. Just as you're talking about, even alcoholism, drug
Oh my
addiction,
gosh.
any of it.
Totally.
You've
Yep.
become someone else. If you can come out of the other side, you will be a different person. And that isn't negative. It's actually can be a positive if you run it that way, right? If you begin to rewrite in your mind
Yep.
and that's your story, that it's great. And that's the road that I took. But identity losses is a huge thing. And what does that mean? And from a lot of different standpoints, it can be identity loss physically, and for people that have um, cancers, breast cancer specifically, when you have to remove your breasts and have a mastectomy and your uterus and a hysterectomy. I mean, physically, you are a different person. And it takes some time to heal, to recognize or to look at yourself physically and recognize you, right? Then there's the emotional part of you. Then there's the spiritual part of you. And then depending on the financial part, because financially, it's expensive to have health illnesses in our country. So there's a lot of angles where identity changes, and again, it can be for the positive, um, and you can also you can. This I think is a very important point too that I talk about is you can still have gratitude and have a positive mindset while you are grieving and the loss of your old identity. It is possible to have grief and gratitude at the same time. Sounds weird, but it's totally they can live together and they can coexist because one of them will dissipate eventually and hopefully it's the grief.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of times people are so like, how can I hurry up and not feel uncomfortable? Like we talked about in the last almost 7 years ago. It's like, I was just thinking about this today too, when I was driving my son home from the lab, and I was just sort of like, we're so conditioned now in our culture, especially this, instant gratification culture, is not to be uncomfortable. Oh no, I have to wait for this thing. I have to this, I have to that. And so it's like we're starting to, especially the younger generation, it's just like, what do you mean I have to put a little more extra effort in and wait and watch the plant grow? I just want to stick a thing in the lab and have instant food or whatever it might be, like, and everything's, just instant. And it's like taking time to have a grieving process of that loss of identity and of that transformation that we go through it sucks because you want to be done with it. Like you want to just be like, well, can't I just grieve today and be done? And it's like, it might take, a year. It might take a day. It might take 10 years. It might go away and then it resurfaces later because somebody shook up the snow globe and all of a sudden it re-triggers something from the past. It's like being, at ease with knowing that's like, it can come up at any time, like loss, even though you go through this process. It's not like well, I checked the boxes. I'm good. I'm healed now. Or, it's like, wouldn't that be nice if I got my checklist? Like I could do something like that. It doesn't.
It is. It's fascinating that you say that. Especially in the world of cancer. A lot of times, what will happen is a patient receives a clean bill of health at the moment. Right? They can ring a bell. They're done with the chemo or their treatments at the time, and they're said to be okay. In that moment, there's always the worry. There's always the PTSD. It'll come back.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is the part of the diagnosis and being a patient in treatment to maybe getting to the point where you are no evidence detected and now you're living after cancer, and how are you living? So it's like living with it, living without it. There are It doesn't really go away from any cancer patient I think you talk to. It can become where you don't think about it as much, right? It doesn't become year if you're clean and it's been years and years and years out, yeah, chances are you've been able to move forward, live a life, enjoy things in a way that maybe when you were living with cancer you couldn't. Um, but there is still always there is kind of this period, right, when you first survive. Some people like to use thrive. Um, that you begin to kind of any sniffle, anything that happens is a cancer is back. The cancer is back. This happens with everyone I interviewed. Was like terrified at any moment
Yeah.
it's returned.
Yeah.
Um,
PTSD.
Yeah, it is. It's PTSD. I remember going, "But isn't that just for veterans?" Like, I didn't realize, like, hey, how would that be for healthcare people? But it is. I know. I live it. I still have those fears, you know?
I I imagine I remember, you were telling me, was it every 90 days you had to get rechecked,
Mhm, yeah.
and so it's
After
just like, I
90
gotta
days, but yes.
that energy leading up to those tests for anybody listening, I mean, I can imagine it's like, okay, it's just anxiety inducing, like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? It's like, how do you live your life, in a place of presence, which is obviously, even without cancer, being a mother and trying to be present with your children is so difficult, especially when they're young, because it's all over. And if you're a working mom outside of the house, and working in the house is just as hard as working out of the house, let me tell you. And it's they're both hard. And so you're constantly in octopus mode, right? And trying to be present. And then now you've got this whole other thing that it's like, oh my gosh. And so what advice would you share with anybody who's might be going through this, who's listening, to help them ease through the cycles of, the test, the retest? Is it out? Is it in? Is it, where am I? Like, how do people stay grounded in a place of presence and faith?
That's a great, question. I think what I have found is practice. Some days you're gonna be killing it, right? You'll be able to do that. On Monday, you'll be like, wow, I caught myself in a moment and I pulled myself out and I'm there. I'm present. It wasn't as difficult today. Tuesday could roll around and you could suck and everything that you thought you learned out the window, right? And you're buried away and oh, what happened? I thought it was, um, and that's okay. That's actually part of it. Like part of healing in general, I say healing isn't linear, doesn't come in every pretty package. You're going to go from A to B to C. Sometimes you can go A to R and then all the way back to B and starting again.
Yeah.
That, that's the journey. It's a journey, right? There's really not a destination in healing. And I think that's the misconception. You feel like I'm healed, I'm fixed, I'm there. Okay, what's next? No, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. The healing portion is the journey. And you can be healing even in moments when you're failing and not doing that well in the practice of healing. You're still getting something out of that. One thing I really love, and I have to use this a lot with myself, and it's a practice, like I'm saying, is failure equals feedback.
Yes, dude. Oh my gosh. I'm so
Failure,
into that because I always talk about failure is simply data points. That's it. You're just gathering data points and you're experimenting, and that's all it is. It's not like, oh my gosh, the shame cloak does not need to come out.
yeah,
Get rid of that sucker. I want to burn it at Burning Man.
but it's so true. I use a
Yeah.
perfect like example right now for me is I'm in this process, right? I'm still creating art. I have a book out which I'm trying to get into the hands as a resource for people that need it. And but I'm still applying to calls to artists for submissions. There's 2 things that I had entered, back in November, and I was pretty much like I felt good about it. And I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I definitely got this." Calls to submissions, they're like a dime a dozen. You can fill lots out, and it's like an actor going on a audition call, like, you know, 100 times, you're gonna get a no, and then you'll get 1 yes out of your submissions. And I was feeling so good about it. And then I found out yesterday that I didn't receive either one of them. So I'm like, "Ah, I got rejected from both." Instead of, which would be my typical me, would be like, I'm not good enough. How come I was rejected? Like, oh my God, this was so great. And I would probably sit in a space and stew over how come I wasn't selected? What did I do wrong? And there's no way to know because these just go into big banks of nobody's giving me like, here's why we didn't select you. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know how many people they could choose. I don't know if someone had someone they knew in it. I don't know if they just had to do this call to fulfill some grant need. Who knows? I don't care. So it's anymore. I don't know if it's me just getting older, but I was like, that sucks. I would have really liked that. All right, I didn't get it. Move on. I've got other things to do. It took a long time for me to get there, especially
It
in,
it
feeling.
does, and because you're vulnerable when you're putting yourself out there artistically, because you're whether it's music, whether it's writing, writing a book, whether it's physical art, anything like that's a huge like because you can do art and just keep it to yourself, but when you share it with the world, it's kind of like you're sharing it with the hopes of, an interaction with the world that gets to experience your art. And so it's the bravest thing and the most vulnerable thing, I think, to be an artist and put your work out there, and it sounds like I have the book over there. Um, just not taking it personally, right? Like the 4 agreements. Have you read the 4 agreements, right? Yeah. So it just sounds like oh, well, that would have been nice, but okay, let's do something else, and not take it as personally, you know.
And I guess I say it in that sense because it has taken me a very long time to actually really truly feel that where I don't. Because there is a lot of time. And I remember when I had it, Leslie, my cancer coach, when I was going through cancer. It's like a life coach, but somebody that actually has
Yeah.
been through cancer and
Yep. Yeah.
in that journey. Um, and I would say, I'm doing the work, but it I feel it feels fake. Like I
Yeah.
don't
Like you're faking it till
feel.
you make it.
Yeah. And I was
Like,
like,
why don't I feel at ease?
I'm like, I just feel like I'm unauthentic, like authentically like being positive, but I'm not a positive person. Leslie, like I am glass half empty. And like I recognize that now. I accept it. And she was like, all right, well, she goes, and I said, and I'm also getting angry at these people out there that I know that are putting positive messages out there. And I know they're not positive. I know them personally. Like as this is fake, it's not real. I don't even want to like it because I feel like, and, we would have conversations about that. Like, why did that bother me that someone else? Why are you so concerned with that where they are? It took me a while to realize, okay, well, that's their journey. Maybe they need to keep practicing the positivity until it actually truly hits. And that's what I realized for me. I was like, all right, I'm going to do the motions. And maybe I recognize I'm doing the motions and I might not feel it yet. But eventually, if I do it enough, it will happen. And that's actually really the true case for me, uh, is just continuing to try to practice gratitude and looked at it more not from being positive, but gratitude and very specific steps of what I was grateful for, even when I wasn't. I remember I kept a little journal if I would go in and I was having a day in treatment. Um, and I would be pissed because I was hungry or freezing or something, and I'm waiting for hours and waiting to do treatment. And I I would literally have to sit there. I remember some of my bullet points were like, okay, I'm going to write in my journal right now. And it's like, I am grateful for the stale I would write this like, I'm grateful for the stale crackers that they gave me in the center. And okay, and the shitty orange juice. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay. Or I would be like, eventually the terminology would begin to change and it would be, it wouldn't feel so like I'm grateful for stale crackers and I'm grateful for orange juice that I don't even drink, even though obviously it doesn't sound grateful. I was trying to identify things and that were good, but it was very hard for me to say I'm grateful for that. And then it would slowly happen, or I'm grateful that there's a heat lamp and it works in this room today, or I can have two blankets because I'm cold and, not one. I mean, like, I would really have to, like, open the door, like, just keep looking for something that I could say I was grateful for
Yeah.
in that way.
Well,
So
I would imagine it's like trying to find gratitude while you're in the middle of a tsunami of emotions and anger and sadness and what the fuckness. And, like, then you're told to, like, well, just be grateful. And you're like, "Mm, here's a thimble of water. I'm so grateful. I'm in the tsunami right now. Okay, there's water. So but it'll work in other situations. That's the other thing. Like, because when you're doing it in the most intense situation that you're in, then when you're starting to get that muscle memory trained, then it's like, oh, everything does seem kind of okay when it's not so up here, and you do get to reset and reprogram your nervous system to your liking, not to the rest of that out there. So it's yeah, it's a process, dude.
it's a
Congrats.
process and it is a rewiring, especially if you're a person that tends to go towards the negative. There are people that definitely are more like they're more um, drawn to the positive way of looking at things. That's amazing. I aspire to be that. My DNA typically was not wired that way. I have to work to be more positive and to practice gratitude. So, to answer your original question, it's really just practice. And in the practice, if you tend to be a type A person or a competitive person or needing to be the best or you're self critical and you suffer from your self criticism constantly, part of that practice is saying, it's okay if today wasn't a great day. I have tomorrow that I can do better.
Yeah.
That's it. Because all we
Yeah.
have is now. Really, that's it. All we know about is right now.
Yep.
Like, I'm
It is.
sitting
And
right
that's,
that's it. I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know about 5 years from now, but I'm here right now, so let me try to make the best of right now, and even if my best isn't my best in this moment, um, I can always make it better later, but what do I learn right now? Or why am I being this way right now? A lot of it is the self-questioning in part of the practice and just the awareness. So in the beginning, if you're someone that was similar to me in that capacity, or even you, um, it's really it's showing up,
yeah.
showing
Yeah.
up. Just show up first, okay, and then show up for yourself, and then practice with yourself, and give yourself permission to fail at it and then celebrate your wins on that's the biggest thing. For me,
Uh-huh.
I've never been really celebratory. As soon as something is good, I'm like, "Okay, how can we do better? How can we?" And sometimes now I try to practice, "Hey, I wanna feel really good about this. I feel good, and, like, what a crazy feeling this is. Something went really well. Um, Let me stop and, like, relish in it for a little bit," you know?
Do you feel like motherhood has shifted the way that you think? Because obviously when our children do well, like we want to be so celebratory for their, oh my God, you took a walk and you pooped in the toilet. Yay. This is, woohoo, this is great news. Like, do you feel like having that opportunity to grow through your children, has given you more ability to shift towards a positive a little bit too, in addition to this part of your journey? Like, do you feel like it's kind of blended in there somehow?
I don't know that I would say that it has shifted that way. I think what really for me, the shifts have been really just with me. One thing I can say with motherhood and my kids or how I parent or how I am a mom. Um, I have very specific ideals of how I want to be, whether they are things that I want to make sure I don't embody from whatever I've experienced, to things that I want to embody, things I know I'm doing well at, and things I know that I could do better, and I catch myself in those moments. Um, the one thing about motherhood is, and I think you don't need a cancer diagnosis for this, but I would say probably because I had cancer early on in motherhood, I kind of tend to put them together. But unconditional love, I mean, I don't think until you can experience unconditional love, I think when you birth a child, and this is not to take away from people who, adopt or surrogacy or something in that way, but there is a true connection with birthing a child, that there is a level of panic and anxiety when you bring a child into this world that you're responsible for, or when you see the genetics of things you don't like about yourself that are passed down to your children. And you're like, "I see that in them. That's not what I like, and how what can I fix it? Uh, how can we get ahead of this?" Or, "Oh my god, I'm looking in the mirror, like, this one is just how I was," and I don't mean that in a positive way. Like, well, I would say I do still struggle with some of those. I'm great with their successes, but when things break down and they aren't, the perfect child, or they've done some things wrong, or are starting to exhibit, characteristics or patterns that concern me, I kinda have to pull myself together, because I will quickly go in a spiral of, like, a fix-it mode, and I have to
Right.
remind myself that, like, it it's not that, but it's not necessarily a fix-it mode. Don't jump ahead of yourself. Don't, I start projecting all different futures for
Doomsday scenarios. Yeah, you're just like future
others.
tripping on, oh, catastrophizing. What if it happens? What if they're a serial killer? Like it always goes to like, what happens if they
Yes.
be like it goes dun, 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 and you're like,
If you keep
no, they're
doing this,
not
you're
going to
gonna
be
go
a
to
serial
prison.
killer.
You're gonna end up in prison, like, I'm like, so,
It's every mother goes through that. I mean, and the reality, as much as I really had this like vision of like, well, when the kids get a little older and they're kind of more on their own, I'm not going to have that. Nope, nope, it's still there. And especially when they're older, because it's like, oh, now they really are I'm seeing, oh no, just like, don't be like me, like cancel, cancel, clear. You're just like, but it's when you have this life that you're responsible for that is inside your body and growing for months, that you have worked hard to get in there and keep in there and pray that it's going to get out okay. It's like there's nothing. Before I had kids, I always was like, oh, I just kind of shrugged it off a little and was like, yeah, yeah, moms, or and you can't have empathy and understanding for what it's like to be a mother and to be psychically constantly 24/7 connected to your babies, even if you're not physically with them, even if you don't know exactly, you just know. And especially you and I and a lot of us other empaths and creatives out there, it's like we're in like direct, it's like we're FaceTiming them all the time psychically, and, and it's just like, I need a break. But it's a beautiful gift, right? To be super in tune and connected, but it's also like, oh no, I don't want to over trip and like future trip about stuff too much that is out of my control in this moment. Okay, well, what can we do? How do we help them? How do we listen and give them that unconditional love and give ourselves some of that too? Because we
and
need it.
you talked about boundaries earlier, and it is true. There are also many boundaries in motherhood, and a lot of it's very fascinating, because I tend to have always been a very planned, prepared person, and I've had to let that go with motherhood. Not all of it, but a lot of it, because there's that famous, line when, "We plan, God laughs," something
Yeah,
like that.
totally.
Couldn't be more true. Like, anything from when they were very small to planning something and then that plans out the door, or gotta do something different. I had to learn how to quickly roll and be flexible when I thought I was flexible, but really wasn't that flexible as a person. And they definitely have taught me flexibility, unconditional love, and how to have more patience. So, and one thing I can say about motherhood is when you have children, whether they're birthed or not in this case, but like whether you if you have children that you take care of, it is like putting a mirror in front of you. And if you don't start working on those things that need help, let me tell you, it's going to come crumbling down quickly. So it's a big mirror on, is this how you want to be? Because this is actually how you are, Nerissa.
Yeah.
And you don't want that, right? Then you're accountable and responsible for making those changes. Um, and there's nothing more than seeing that in the kids or something you do. I think any mother that's here, maybe even any father that could be listening to, it's that thing like, oh my God, I just did this. Now I got to pay for therapy
I know.
because it's like everything I've just done is now we got to find a way to fit. Like like I've screwed them up. I've put them on this path.
Totally. And I know I've obviously been through the ringer, and I think every human, every parent has been through the ringer, and every mother, like we go through mommy guilt, even before I had the baby out of my belly, I was like, oh my God, what if I ate the wrong thing? What if whatever, the constant, right? Oh no, what if there's electromagnetic fields that have exposed me, all the shit, right? We're just constantly like, ah, like, and it's hormonal. I think we turn into these protectors, and then obviously we love them and then we get that as well and the super bond and connection. But for me, like, I know, like, I remember I saw Ruvain too, like that you mentioned Ruvain in your book, which is great. I love Ruvain was great. And I was struggling with one of the kids and I felt like, because obviously all of my shit, it's like, oh no, now they've got to be exposed to my life and my trauma. And now I've traumatized my children because I didn't do my own work that I should have done, and I don't love to shit on myself, but I wish I would have known before I got pregnant how much work I needed to do in order to be more stable, grounded, not as reactive, the whole thing. I wish I had a giant toolbox that I have now that's still getting filled up, but like I thought that I was equipped and it was like I was showing up with like a pocket knife, instead of like this giant Home Depot thing that is like, ooh, these are all my tools for navigating life. And I was like, oops. So if you're listening, moms, like the biggest gift you can give your children is working on yourself and healing yourself and making sure that like you're not showing up with a pocket knife when you really do need like all these wonderful tools to be flexible and to handle the things when they don't go as planned, and just be like, well, okay, I'm not going to let this trigger me and scream at my kid and traumatize them, which is what I did. And I was like, oh my God. I asked Ruvain, we were doing some Byron Katie work, the work and which I was loving, and he was just like, is it really true that you've damaged your children for life? And I was just like, I don't know, maybe, and he's like, dude, because I was worried that they were never going to feel love, and that they were going to get damaged because their mom was, I yelled at them and did all these awful things. And so it was just like, is it true that they can't feel love? And I was like, no, because they have all these different people. And so it just got to the point where it was just like, dismantle that lie that's in my head, and really understand that it's okay. And for me, and I don't know about you, I'd love to hear your story, but like God, spirit, universe is like the number one thing in my life and how I orient everything. And when I try to get too much up here, gets just I'm not very good at that part. I'm good, but I'm way better at being in my heart and like connected and faithful with the energy of infinity or the universe, spirit, whatever. And so do you have a practice or a faith, a connection or anything that you want to share that like keeps you grounded or connected to source or love, if you just call it love?
So I think one thing when I heard you talking, I immediately identified with and we were talking about Ruvain before, and we were also talking a little bit before about the rewiring in your mind. Um, One thing for me that was really helpful with regards to NLP is beginning to understand how I see, hear, and feel the world. And one thing I learned in a year of study in a program about it with a lot of exercises and between myself and other people that we would have to do and videotape and do all of this, not videotape, but like, online. Showing my age there, videotape. So I learned that when I want to say intuition, like, because it sounded like with you, if you start, you're more in your heart rather than your head can fluster things for you, and then things become doubtful, right? And you're like, oh, which way now? Now I'm overthinking.
Yeah.
I'm definitely an overthinker, and I too feel it's some of it's in a feeling, an energy that you get, um, and it's usually the first one, so you don't have enough time to run through it. However, I say that with a little bit of a caveat because I had learned in the NLP practice that all the poor decisions, the bad ones I was making in my life, were auditory. When I would listen to myself would give me bad instruction. So it was like I did have an auditory nature of something that would nag at me, that would be the right or proper direction to go. But I very quickly could just turn that volume down a bit, and the bad news guy, or naughty Nerissa over here, would like tell me what we should do, right? And talk me into it. So one thing I recognized in when you say a practice is was beginning to understand the voices, like which one was which and which was the right audio we needed to turn down so we could make.
Love that you're saying this, Nerissa. This is something I teach in my 11X Love method is like taking control, like being the DJ of what's going on in your head and looking at a
Mhm.
mixing board and all the different voices. Like sometimes they're yours, sometimes it's society, sometimes it's your church, sometimes whoever, whatever all these voices are that are kind of giving you information in the moments. And it's kind of like, what's the voice that is going to give you the highest and best result for yourself and your loved ones and your mission? And so it's kind of like, really getting to know that, but not feeling out of control and that someone else is controlling the volumes, you know? And so taking back that power with that. And it's easier said than done. It's way easier said than done. It's like, oh, that sounds cute. Yay. And I'm still like up here with a can of nickels in a tin can in my head sometimes,
It's
you know?
it's definitely a big process.
Yeah.
It's not something like, hey, you're going to turn around and do it tomorrow. It
Mm-mm.
is a process. It's a learned process. It takes a lot of understanding, research, and reading, and then applying it to yourself and trying it out, trying it on other people left and right. Like, how do you try it on you? See how it works on someone else. There is a lot of that, and not to sound daunting with it, because that can sound very daunting. Uh,
Mhm.
Again, it's just time. If you're okay with knowing that in time it will come around, then you're halfway there. If you're expecting that instant gratification, that 2-hour window of Amazon delivery that we all need by 4 p.m. tonight, or we could use it, that isn't. It's not going to help you. It's not going to work.
No,
It
it's
just
putting
doesn't.
in the reps, and it's just like whether it's art, whether it's working at the gym, like everybody knows if you want to go, get a tone abs or whatever it is, like you don't just show up or do a weekend workshop and yay, look at me, I'm I look great again. It's like you have to do a daily practice and stick with it, and know that sometimes it's like, I don't feel like doing it. It's like, do it anyway, and I think that's sort of
Well, I'd say
the remembrance.
for your listeners with that is set some if you set some realistic goals, right? Knowing that you're not meeting an end goal right away, you will feel more set up for success, right? So even if it's just like today, where will my awareness be on how I am? Don't try to change yourself. Don't try to fix anything. Just be aware. Like, where's the awareness? That's one. If you don't have awareness, you don't even know how to go forward. So awareness is a big key. And that takes time, right? It takes time to build up. And then you get to the point where you've got your awareness, and then you can build it with practice and tools, but just become aware to know yourself a little bit more. I think it's really fascinating how most people are not self-aware.
No, they're not, and we're not taught to be, because we're taught to be aware of everyone else and not our own stuff. I call it getting your MeHD, and it's about really like, how do we know what ourself and what is authentically true for us? Because a lot of times we're out there like, oh, I'm supposed to have big boobs, or I'm supposed to have a lips, or I'm supposed to do this, or I'm supposed to have money, or like, is that actually what I want, or am I just conforming? And of course, tribally, for survival, humans get in groups to survive. And so that's since the dawn of time. Babies won't survive if you just leave them all by themselves. We have to have connection and humanity. But so, but because we might be in certain groups or tribes, we start to conform just because, like, oh, okay, you're doing that. Okay, cool. Uh-oh, that guy got kicked out of the tribe. I better not do what he did over there. And so you start to conform who you are to the group. But then as we get older, we start to have that, is this really me? Am I happy? Like, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful life, like the song. And it's just like, people have these midlife crises, we get health issues, we get stress, all of this stuff, we get addiction. And it's just like, if we can take time to have that, like, is this really what I want to do? Or do I just constantly keep saying yes to my no's and no to my yeses? But I haven't even taken enough time to know what my yeses and no's are,
Mhm.
because I'm so busy just people pleasing and doing all the other things and fitting into the mold, like, of the perfect wife or the perfect artist or the perfect this, and then it's just like, I really don't want to go to that event. I really don't want to take this client, or I want to go do this instead. So it's just like, and it's a tough one, because it's a survival program. And so it's like, how do you stay in survival, but then also into consciousness evolution and authenticity of who we are as individuals? And so it's not like, "Oh, yeah, I'm aware. I'm going to just know myself now." It's like, no, we're still doing this thing, to keep the peace in different relationships. Have you ever read a book called The Courage to Be Disliked?
No.
It's great. It's a really good book, and it really, it just is a great book for anybody listening. I highly recommend it. And um, yeah, it's a great book. But it's about authentic living, but it's also a lot about rewriting the story of how we got here, because a lot of people are stuck in this, like, oh, my parents this and trauma this and all this stuff, and they hold on to that like it's a crown of glory, and it's just like, those things happened, and who am I now, and what have I done with those, like, tidbits of data, instead of like letting it totally constantly pull me down. So I think it's an interesting, um and it's courage.
Identifier. I think that people begin to identify with their experiences, that they are that experience, but they're not their experience. Their experience does affect them, but they're not their experience. Like, that's not the qualifier for identity. And that happens a lot too with people that suffer from health issues. You begin to identify as, like I was saying earlier, the number, the stage, the treatment. And it's it takes a long time to figure out how not to have that identity,
Yeah.
um, in that way. But that happens not just with health illnesses, like, but it happens in general, whatever it is, abuse, addiction, whatever, we begin to identify as that item or that instance, experience, what have you. And that's unfortunate because it isn't our identity. But that
Yeah.
is the hard work, right? So when you do identify something like that and then you strip it away, right? Even like mothers, before I had cancer, I really didn't realize until I left my corporate job and working for so many years that, like, I felt, and I think I talk about it in the book a little, is like when I had cancer, I started identifying as a cancer patient, which I didn't want to identify because I didn't want other people to classify me like that or look at me as like
Oh, yeah.
me or something like that. So I felt very careful who to share that information with because I didn't want to be seen as different. Um, but at the same time, when I quit my job and then I was like, okay, I'm going to take time and I grateful that I had that ability and recognized very fortunate to be able to do that. You would think that in that moment, you'd say, most people will go, wow, you have a partner that says they'll take over for now and they'll allow you this time to do what you want and get healthy and be with your family. I was like, sounds amazing. I struggled so much because I'd moved to a new neighborhood. And then what is the first thing when people meet you? They say, so what do you do? That's how we connect with each other. But, and it's not in any bad way that somebody necessarily asks that. It's we're just conditioned to say, "What do you do?" And for most people, they are not doing something that represents them. They have a job that makes a income and then they come home and then that's a different life. Most people aren't living their passion and love and, project management was everything that I wanted, growing up. No. So I found when people would ask and then I was no longer, like, working, that's the only thing I identified as, and I got really depressed because I thought, "This is so pathetic." Like, if I'm not in a marketing job, I can't, I don't know how to respond to people, or I feel like I'm gonna be judged because I'm not working in an office doing, that type of thing. I quickly felt like I had to find an identity, so it was like, "I return to art and I'm an artist. That's what I am," Like,
This is
I
where my self-worth and value comes from is because I have this label thing that I do this thing instead of what I actually am, which
Right.
is love, you know? We're just love, and then all the other stuff is all this cool, like, costumes that we put on ourselves, you know? And it
And it's fascinating to me, but, again, identity doesn't have to be your experience. Um, what it does do is it adds to who you are as a person, right?
yeah.
And hopefully, even if it's adversity, it will come out and add to the benefit of who you are,
Yeah,
right?
I look at it like thumbprints in a sculpture. It's kind of like if you're sculpting with are you there? Oh, there you go. You were frozen for a sec. Are you good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I
good. I look at like all these things, right? Like each experience is a thumbprint in the sculpture if you're doing clay or something, you know? And it's just like or each experience is a test or a tile, you know? Uh, and so in a mosaic and it's like they all make up the whole. And so it doesn't define the whole. And I look at like Ram Dass, I don't know if you can see him in this picture here, but he's my first spiritual teacher when I was 19. I'm reading, Be Here Now. And he ended up having a stroke, years later. And, he's a talker, and it's just like I liked it occurred to me listening to him, and it was obviously him too, but he was just like, I didn't have a stroke. My body had a stroke. I am still me, And so just differentiating that was so profound at the time. I would think I was in my early 20s, mid 20s. And it was just like, yeah, it's not you because the essence of you is always there and pure. And all these other things are just, the thumbprints. And so that just, I don't know. So I wonder if that's something for folks listening, to resonate that it's like your body's experiencing cancer right now. Does that seem like it would be helpful to listen? Because it sounds like you didn't want to identify as like, oh, you know,
No,
like,
I didn't wanna identify at first. I didn't wanna share it with people at first, but it was more in a weird way. I don't really know how to articulate it too well, but it was almost like a shame that I had, that therefore now, even though I didn't feel sickly before, I didn't end up finding out I had cancer because I was felt sick or anything like that.
right.
So I didn't feel different. I didn't until medications and surgeries and all of that came in. That's very different. But prior to that, just initial diagnosis, all of a sudden you take on, I'm sick. Oh. I felt like I don't want people to know I'm sick in that way because maybe they won't invite me out anymore. Maybe what am I supposed to do in these mommy groups? Like everybody goes to get wine. I can't drink. I'm on immunotherapies. Like it was a very strange dynamic. I just wanted to feel like normal, and I was excited about that time of life and maybe meeting new people because as an adult outside of work, um, it's harder to meet people. It's
It's
really
so hard.
I don't know, I think I was, I like Mel Robbins, and I was listening to her Let Them,
Oh,
theory book,
totally.
and it was very interesting to talk about, like, really in life, when you are younger, you are put like, you're strategically put into the school that someone wants that feels that you fit in, and then you make your bubble of friends, and you're all there together, and you have common interests like your age, where your geography, where you're from, those types of things, maybe some interests that are hobbies together. Maybe you go to a sports team and you all have that into common that you like, or a dance team or a cheerlead or something, right? You have those things in common, and they're all kind of curated for you, and you make your friends in these groups. But when you become an adult and you go out, it's very noticeable in your 20s when you aren't in these crafted areas and nobody's putting these little groups for you to go into anymore, and you have to do your own, and then also you work and you're trying to navigate figuring out how to be independent 20 something and pay your bills. Your friends become the people at work. However, the problem, wherever you work or whatever you do, is not everybody's in the same chapter of life, right? So you may be friendly with somebody, you try to find the commonalities. Like when I was single and younger, I wasn't befriending the moms that had kids at home like that. They have to get what? No. I needed this single people and what are they doing and where are they going? And then when I became a mom, I needed those people
You need
kind of
moms, yeah.
friends kind of come and go depending on what they're still your friends and you can come back at some point, but you really don't hang out with them as much because you're following whatever it is. And then when you have kids, usually their friends, parents or something are now you're trying to find that connection. And half
Mhm.
like, I don't want to hang out with these people. Like, please, I can't do another play date.
I don't wanna play date. Please don't make us do play
No
date.
more play dates out with these people. You know,
Can we get some new friends?
I'm notorious now for like, you could drop your child off if you want.
It's like, "Don't come in, I don't wanna talk to you."
I'm busy. But like, but this is where I was like looking forward to like, this is how I'm going to meet people. This is what everybody says. You're going to have a kid and don't worry, you're going to meet people in the new area because you have a kid and you'll go to these things. And not everybody gives you the whole story on how that works out, but that's, that's kind of what really happens. And so when you become the adult and you're looking for people in your life, I don't know. It doesn't happen the same way when you're younger. So
No, and it's something, again, like this, just the TLC group, and I did a survey, I mean, it was like 50 moms that I surveyed a couple like 2 months ago because 'cause I'm putting this thing together for like an app and a community building type thing, and the number one thing they all said, because I gave them all the, "What are you missing?" And it was support. They don't feel supported and connected, like they feel alone on their journey, and, these are women all over the world, and so and then you obviously can narrow things down, right? So you have, I don't feel supported. And then now I'm like, okay, I'm drinking and I don't feel supported, or I'm facing cancer and I don't feel supported, or I have, 3 kids under 5, or, whatever it is. Like, so how do you keep getting people more in a place where they can feel seen and heard, and technology is obviously like a magical gift for us, but it's also could be this total distractomatic thing that sucks our, so it's like being intentional with our time and our managing our calendar and our mind. Like, don't open the doors to everything, right? Like, we've got to be discerning. And I think, as people pleasers, sometimes we want to just say yes to everything. And, oh, I don't want to make them feel bad if I don't come. And it's just like, actually, that's really not going to work for me, and anyway, I just think that's something I'm learning later, way later in life. Too late. Not it's never too late, I guess. But well, so let's talk. Like, everybody can obviously get Canvas of Courage on Amazon, you guys. I'm gonna have all the links and everything for Nerissa uh, in the show notes. What would you say to people going through this right now? Like, what's the number one thing you want people to understand and who might be listening to this?
Mm. I would say that that's a difficult one because people going through the journey, no journey is the same, and no day or no moment is the same. No diagnosis, even though they could be the same diagnosis, the journey is quite different in how your body responds.
Yeah.
So I would just say that you're not alone and that being in the presence, or I should say, being in the present tense is your friend and it is a gift. And to try not to, it's very hard, but to find some tools and some avenues that will work um, to allow you to remain present and not to jump on a hamster wheel of thoughts that really do not serve you. So here is the truth. Here's one item before we go. It was the light bulb moment for me when I had cancer, before things started to turn around for me, and that was when I saw Ruvain, and we worked on something, and that was he asked me to give him 2 beliefs that I had that I was walking around with, and I really thought I had him um, on this, and I didn't. But, um, one was I walked around saying, "Cancer is a death sentence." And so he would ask, "Is it always a death sentence? Like everyone you know has cancer, has died?" And I said, "Yes." So tell me that it's not, right? A little arrogant of me in that way, but kind of trying to say like, I don't think you're going to be able to awaken anything in me. Was a little resistant there. And he said, "Okay, fair point. So in your life, everyone you have known with cancer has passed away. What about in general? Let's broaden that, right? Because to say cancer is a death sentence, you're saying cancer is a death sentence for everyone, including yourself." Uh, and and so he said, "Has everyone that has had cancer died?" Like think about celebrities or people you may not know, or a friend of a friend, or something along those ways. So I said, "Okay, you're right. That's true. Not everybody has died from cancer. Just the people I know, but if I really open my mind a bit more, no, there are people that have plenty of people who have survived cancer." Um, so we knocked that out. And I said, "I don't want to use that one as my truth to go forward." And so I go, "I have another.
It's like, let's
Cancer is
go.
cancer is bad. Try to tell me it's not bad." Then I thought I had him.
Yeah. You're like, so
I was like,
take that.
I got this guy now, it's supposed to be so amazing." And then he was like, "All right, let's talk about some things with you with cancer where you could tell me absolutely that it's not bad." And it was a little hard to struggle. I'm shortening this process that we went through, but I was able to name 3 things. I said, "Since I've had cancer, it strengthened my relationship with my husband. I We have a relationship I didn't even know existed." And his level of support in that process for me was, like, unbelievable. My biggest cheerleader and advocate. We didn't have that prior to cancer. So I wouldn't have seen that side of him and known about his supportive ways if I hadn't had that. That's one. 2 is to become a more present parent. So, as a planner and somebody that's always preparing and planning for everything that we're doing, I wasn't that present because I was trying to spread myself in all these different directions. Cancer allowed me to slow down and to be present for sure. Um, and it also allowed me to look at myself, really to look at myself, where I took the time to say, I am not living authentically. And I have a lot of toxic behaviors in my mindset. And I probably don't know if I would have found that, or at least I wouldn't have found it as quickly because I never listened to it. Really didn't listen to the voices that I did have that were the good voices. Um, and cancer allowed me to listen to that. It said stop. So not bad.
Very good. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Those are wonderful turnarounds, and it's so I know it's hard. It's not like, "Yay, come here, I want some more," but it's like we have I call it lesson LAB, like the love lab, the lab of life, learn lessons and blessings, like, "What's this teaching me? What's the good thing?" You know? And but it's like it's if we do take that time, we can find it. And thank goodness there are people out there like Ruvain and like yourself who are doing therapeutic art and working with people in groups and writing the book and sharing the stories of courage. And it's so needed. And I'm so glad you're using your voice, and you are a writer. And, you're like, "I wouldn't call myself a writer." I'm like, "Well, apparently you are now." Um, check that box there. Um, I'm so happy for you, Nerissa, and I'm so glad that, you're taking something that has been very painful and turning it into something that's powerful for other people to learn and grow from, and hopefully help them on their healing journey and not feel alone.
I feel it's my responsibility. So I'm lucky. I'm here. I'm healthy. I'm alive, and I feel like I have to give that back. That's, I think, even part of the process of why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, you are. And this is one of the millions of reasons why you're here. Yay. Well, I'm so grateful for you, Nerissa. And you guys can go check out nerissaballand.com. You can go get Canvas of Courage on amazon.com. And again, I'll put all the links in the show notes for you guys. And thank you so much, Nerissa. And give everyone a hug down there in warm Florida. It's cold up here in Colorado.
It's actually cold in Florida. I'm wearing this because today it's cold. Not as cold as Colorado, but it's cold.
Right on. That's awesome. All right. Well,
Thank you.
everybody, peace, love, and warm aloha. Make sure you share this with your friends and get Canvas of Courage. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again, Nerissa. Thanks for
Thank
spending
you.
so much time.